a weekly poll, and we talk about all things account-based marketing. In this week's poll, I asked the question about what's preventing companies from using an account-based strategy to maximize its effectiveness. Obviously, some limitations of the LinkedIn poll in terms of the number of characters you can put in. So these are kind of rough order of magnitude, but we got a really good turnout. Actually, 57 people voted. And my assumption was lack of alignment. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today, the difference between operational and strategic alignment. But I kind of saw that as the number one, or continue to see that as the number one issue with companies that are trying to pull off an account-based strategy successfully. But Megan, what was your reaction when you saw this, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I'm not surprised on the lack of alignment. But what occurs to me kind of looking at this in totality is all of these are fixable, right? I mean, none of this is something that a team with, the right leadership and the right commitment to saying, how are we going to make this better? And an openness to understanding and working with whomever your lack of alignment is with, assuming sales. But I read an article a million years ago that said, if sales and marketing aren't able to work together, it's marketing's fault, even if it's not marketing's fault. And I've always thought that was a really smart way to look at things. And I can say that has served me well throughout my career. And that sort of jumps out at me here. And then the other one is insufficient experience. Fixable, all fixable. There are so many resources out there, so many ways to help your team acquire the skills, the knowledge, and the willingness, also coaching them on the willingness to work with others and understand the perspective of others to get that alignment that, this is all fixable. The only one that's maybe a challenge is the insufficient staff, given the talent shortages in the market that we hear about today. But again, talent shortage is usually related to insufficient experience and is fixable. So I guess in a way it's good news, right? These are all fixable things. If you do fix them, good things happen. It's just, you've got to be willing to sort of stay that course. That was my overall take, but we've got a great guest here today. Rashmi, thank you so much for persevering and joining us from your power outage rainstorm scenario there and for making the show go on. As you said, thank you for that. It would be great to have kind of your perspective on this. What do you think about what kind of holds companies back from realizing their account-based dreams?
Yeah, no, first off, thank you so much for having me. I'm super happy to be here. I think this is a great topic. I think it's a very timely topic, and it's something that you can never stop talking a lot about. So, first off, I think it's really interesting on the sales and marketing alignment. I mean, we've been talking about sales and marketing alignment for years, and it's taken on various shapes and forms in terms of what that means. I think in the context of ABM, I think it's actually kind of evolved. I think with ABM, I think overwhelmingly sales and marketing leaders actually agree the fact that ABM as a strategy is a good idea and we should go pursue it. I think where they really fall short is their ability to execute on it successfully. And there's different roles that sales and marketing play respectively. And the question is, can you really nail down the optimization of execution so that you could see kind of the fruits of the labor and investment that are made? So that's my initial thoughts on alignment.
Yeah, I think
oh, go ahead, John.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love your focus on execution there. I hear that come up a lot with the companies that I've worked with over the years. And, side note too, gosh, I wish we could have fixed alignment by now, but apparently it's harder than it looked. But I think the key thing there, I like your word execution. What aspects of execution would you encourage companies to look at in terms of the things that you've seen be challenging, but also the things that you see kind of be fixable?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think you started hinting upon it, right? A little bit about people don't have enough experience. So I think continual training, coaching, mentoring, not only on the sales side, which I think as marketing leaders, you might kind of quickly lean towards, but also on the marketing side and making sure and understanding, what are the different tools and levers one can use and pull in order to drive effective, what I would call account activation through your marketing programs? And then from a sales perspective, how can they truly understand all the various types of information that they're getting so that they can actually do, and this is the big, I think, divide that's really happening, so they can actually do personalization at scale. I think personalization at scale, when you think about it, ABM is all centered around one-to-one, right? How do I know what my account is? How do I know who's my buyer group in that account? How do I know the individuals and the different kind of stakeholders within that account? And then you're asking salespeople to say, oh, okay, now I've got to go write personalized emails or outreach calls, what social selling, whatever it might be, not just to one individual within that account buyer group, but to like potentially 7, 10 with different roles, with different perspectives, and understand who that is. I mean, that level of personalization at scale is really hard to do. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, many marketing sales leaders come back on. Actually, just to say to that, one of the things that we just recently done, we just commissioned a research report from Renegade that surveyed over 200 marketing and sales leaders, and it really was insightful to see kind of exactly where on this execution front, leaders feel like they're falling short. So it aligns kind of a lot to what I've just been talking about, and also what I've been hearing as I've been talking to my peers.
Yeah, I think you're the research that you're referencing, and I just put in a link. You said that's getting published early next week?
Actually, we launched it yesterday, John. So
Okay.
it's called The New Sales and Marketing Divide. It's Not What You Think. So it is now out. It's on our website. We've been promoting it on social. So I think you provided. Did you provide a link to it on in the chat? Or if not, I can.
Yeah, if you can't, or one of us will dig it up. Yeah, mine links to yours, so you have to double link, like you have to double click to get to it. I didn't realize it was pushed out yesterday, but that's great. That's fantastic. And I think the thing that struck me, because I had looked at the research in advance of the publication, obviously we were collaborating on it. The thing that struck me was kind of the like you said, the personalization at scale has always been a challenge with every company that wants to do ABM, one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many. But it's also a challenge depending on how you're defining that from a sales perspective or a marketing perspective. So marketers have this idea of personalization at scale. And then if you're an SDR or salesperson, they have their idea of personalization at scale as well. And yes, there's some intersect, but it's not a one-for-one intersect. I'm curious, like, what kind of trends are you seeing with personalization at scale on both sides of the house there? Since obviously Conversica kind of plays in that area, but what are you seeing trend wise?
Yeah, trend wise, what we're seeing is it's across a couple of different fronts. I mean, let's start with the sales people's use of really what, all the different type of information they have access to, right? The data that they have access to, whether that's being served within their CRM system or being served maybe from other tools like an ABM platform or intent data provider tools. But at the end of the day, there's a large body of information, right? Where you get signals, buyer signals in terms of what buyers are searching on, what topics they could be interested in, even competitive. Are they searching more on your competitor's brand versus yourself? And so how can they, and then along with the firmographic, demographic information that they have, how can they stitch that together and then add on their research so that they could drive truly personalized outreach? And what we found is really, really interesting. Let's just take email outreach, for example, right? Only 49% of the folks that we surveyed use useful information in the body of the email, right? Only 47% have relevant subject lines. We know, especially depending on who you are trying to do outreach to, we know that in the case of email as a channel, those subject lines really matter. They can easily go from that subject line determines whether something's going to get opened or something's going to go into immediately archived, right? And then even moving on, only 42% of sales of the folks we surveyed believe that salespeople actually personalize messages informed by intent data, right? So you're having, majority of teams today are still not using their intent data as they should be to be driving personalization at scale. And then you think about it, you go, God, you take all this time to set it up, you get it activated within your organization. And then if it's being underutilized, then you have to ask, okay, there's one element right there where you're not going to get optimal performance out of your ABM program.
Can I just interject there? I mean, I think it is hard, to expect an SDR or an account manager to know what that means, like to pick up a signal and then to craft a message based on that. that's really doesn't feel, that feels natural?
Yeah, it's tough, right? I'm not saying it's easy. It is tough. We're asking a lot of SDR, sales development reps, or inside sales reps, as well as AEs. I think the takeaway is that there is an abundance of data. It's how can you be in what I like to say like a detective, and being able to stitch that together to formulate your hypotheses and then use that to inform yourself on your outreach. And I don't think it has to be uber complicated in that sense. I mean, today we're, if you think about ABM programs, right? And sales, what sales responsibility is, we're asking them to go research on LinkedIn profiles or on Facebook profiles. We're asking them to go do, to go look up, 10Ks or, annual reports, and, go do research on the company's website, and then come back and kind of formulate what I would say an interested person's board, right? And then how do you take that interested people board and then turn that into, really personalized outreach? That is what we're asking salespeople to do. And you're right, it is not, what it requires is discipline. And what we as human beings are not very good at is being super disciplined consistently.
Yeah, I think you're good.
I wanted to interject one thing, just to really simplify this. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So the first thing Megan said was, we've got to align to sales. But from there, there's this really, for ABM in particular, this really powerful observation that it's not likely, I don't think, in the short term, that we're going to modify sales behaviors as marketers. So one of the things we have to look for is, what is sales actually going to do, what they like to do, what they're currently working on, and what are they not doing? And can we fill in that part that they are not doing for them? So this is taking on additional work for marketing, but there are AI-driven automation products that can help you here. And so I would pose this one question: what percentage of the people who you've engaged with, or once, is not qualified as an MQL, or you can tell should be interested in engaging with you, what percentage of those people are you actually able to touch in a relevant way? I think the number that you aren't currently touching in a relevant way is huge. I'd like my SDRs to do it, but I don't think they're going to do it. So I got to find some other way to do it. To do ABM, to do this idea that more people in my target accounts will be aware of the relevance of what I can do for them. So I'd love to hear other people say, do you think you're reaching out to all the people you should be reaching out to with any technique?
No, I don't. I would argue that knowing who you need to reach out to is part of the equation, and then reaching out to them is the other part. And then how you do that, how well you do that, I think is also kind of another element. I think knowing who you reach out to kind of comes back to the fundamentals of marketing, which is, who's your ICP? Like, who's your ideal company profile? Who is your buyer personas? How does that translate to, the titles and the people you should go after? And how do you stitch that, how do you weave that fabric together and then inform your salespeople who they need to go after, or work with whether it's your rev ops team, your marketing ops or sales ops team, to go help in an automated fashion discover who those folks are. And so, no, I do think it starts with the fundamentals of ICP and persona, and then you go from there as it applies to each account.
Yeah, but do you agree that it's unlikely that sales is going to be willing to do that sort of preliminary outreach for marketing?
I don't know if I fully understand your question there, John. I think if you're saying, I think marketing needs supply the ICP, the buyer personas, and the framework. And then I think there needs to be ops, like operations, that help pull that together against your target account list, load it up into your CRM, and then you give the salespeople their target account list, their tiers, and you say, go do your, and I do think it's a combination of outbound prospecting as well as marketing air cover to truly activate those accounts.
Yeah, so where I'm going here is that there are more people in your target accounts and your ABM list than sales is likely to focus on. And so
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think this is where I truly, when you think about people, process, and technology, I think this is where technology can really help and have a hand in to just augment your sales team so they feel like they can actually go after the different buyers within a buying group in an account.
Yeah.
Rashmi, I agree with you. And I want to follow up on a point you just made that I think is really important, which is going back to the ICP, right? Who is it that the business, not even just marketing, like who does the business think is their target audience? And how did you arrive at that conclusion? Because I'd love to get folks on the call's thoughts, maybe starting with Rashmi, about what have you seen in terms of successful collaborative ICP definition? You know, who's at the table during that process? I feel like a lot of the breakdown and alignment actually starts there.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think, well, I could just only speak to what I've done or what we've done here now and in the past. It takes your go-to-market leaders sitting around the table. So it isn't just marketing in their ivory tower thinking this by looking at leads flowing through Marketo. This is sitting down with your customer success team, right? Understanding who is the customer that we serve, right? Why do they like it? Why do they see value out of it? What trends and patterns do you see? Then sitting with your sales team, they're on the front lines every day. You know, what are those conversations like? Is the people that we're kind of initially telling them to go talk to, are those the right people, or are they redirecting them to somebody else, right? And then it's your partnerships. If partner is a big part of your kind of go-to-market strategy, well, then what does your partner CP look like, PCP look like? And so I think you need to have, and then what can the data tell you? What is the data from from both your marketing automation platform and also your CRM telling you about your company? And you've got to do some forensics and take a look at that, and then come to have a point of view. I'm very big on hypotheses, like have a point of view, have a hypothesis, and then prove it or disprove it.
Yeah, right on. I love that. The scientific method lasts, right? And it works. There's a reason it's been around for so long and all of our kids learn it in school. It works. But yeah, I think that's a really key point, right? Is this isn't just a set of opinions, right? If you have to have data. I'd be curious to see if other folks seen successful ICP definition processes, really collaborative ones that bring those go-to-market leads together. You know, Joe or John or Linda, anyone seen anything? John Russo, you know, what else have you seen out there?
So I would say this, that the definition of ICP and then the operationalization of it actually is different from marketing versus sales. So sales is about kind of optimizing the fewest number of people I need to connect with to create momentum in the deal. But those people are all influenced by additional people. And so marketing used to think more broadly, I think, about the ICP. So let me give you an example from our work. In what we sell, there are all kinds of different types of users, and there are implementers as well. We don't sell to the implementers of our solution. We sell to the sort of end beneficiaries of the solution. But if we only, and so those are the end beneficiaries, are the people who buy. But if we don't interact very, very effectively with the people in MOPS and SOPs, we're actually leading up to a big problem when implementation needs to happen. And so we're working really hard on as an organization, trying to understand the difference between marketing to MOPS and SOPs and who we sell to, between customer success with MOPS and SOPs versus who sales is interacting with. And so I would say that our ICP includes MOPS and SOPs, but sales isn't really calling on those people. So we have to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. I would say that on average in today's kind of complex B2B marketing and sales cycle, and I'm going to say B2B, I'm not going to talk B2C, but complex B2B marketing sales cycle. What does Gartner say? I mean, Gartner said it was like now 7 to 9 people on average within your buyer group. And it includes procurement and security and the folks you have to get through at later stages of the sales cycle. But if you as a sales rep are not knowing who those people are earlier in your sales cycle, when you get to that stage 3, stage 4, stage 5 deal, and now you're thinking, oh, now I'm going to go talk to procurement. Now I'm going to go talk to security. You're just going to add days to your sales cycle. And what you need to think about holistically is if you created a true account strategy plan for account, especially on your tiered list, right? Because that's supposed to be given kind of that TLC to drive conversion. You need to know who all those players are, and you need to have a game plan, an orchestration plan, let's say, of when you need to contact them and how at what point of the sales cycle should you be reaching out to these folks. I don't disagree that marketing can absolutely provide some support here, and it's just really what I call it's an orchestrated dance between the two teams in terms of which are the ones that who are the people initially you need to go after to do opportunity creation, who are then the next people you need to do to drive opportunity down the sales cycle, and then who do you need to make sure there's not obstructionists in your sales cycle so you could get it to close.
And what John, I don't know if you just saw what John just posted, that's really an important component of it, being able to differentiate and identify who's the end user, who's the economic buyer, who's the technology buyer. But I find that we often don't know that until there's already an opportunity. So they've met the people, that's when the roles start to appear. So how do you find out who those people are when you're in your outreach mode? That's a challenge.
Yeah, you have hypotheses, like micro hypotheses. You kind of lay it down. LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. Do some forensic investigative work, and then you go test and see. And then as you're getting into that discovery call, if it's going really well, you're going to next stages. You just kind of say, hey, I really want to make sure that this is going to be something super beneficial to you and your group and your team. Who else do I need to know? Who else do we need to talk to? And let's bring them in early, right? Let's begin the education process now.
John, that reminds me of when a few weeks ago, you were saying, wouldn't it be great, if these SDRs could get the initial meeting set up with the whole buying committee?
Well, yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. I brought it up and this head of sales kind of looked at me like I was so, I didn't know what I was talking about. Do you know how hard that is? These SDRs can't do that.
No,
maybe the wrong SDRs then.
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think it's what I've seen successful is that when the SDRs and AEs really do, and I call them pods, they pod up, they make a really nice pod. They talk to each other every day. I mean, it's like sprints every day, understanding how they're going to tackle whatever 1, 2, 3 accounts for that day or week or whatever they're trying to do. And it's a division of responsibilities, and it's not just solely up to the SDR. I think it needs to be up to the AE and SDR and working together in tandem to try and tackle how you penetrate that account. And then again, I keep on saying I feel like I'm a fortune cookie, but it's with marketing's help and support. There's certain things that marketing can certainly do, to help to obviously not only just wake up accounts, drive interest within those accounts, but continue to further educate within those accounts. But it's really that I think that, how's the Batman and Robin situation working when you're trying to tackle an account penetration?
I think you're bringing up a really good point about the SDRs and their importance and how challenging of a role that is. Like, I don't know if anybody on this call has been or is an SDR. Or on the recording is an SDR, but it has got to be the most challenging role. And then Rashmi and John kind of saying something similar here, or a theme of how do you prepare the SDRs for that conversation? There's a gap there. I know in a couple clients, we've tried to build frameworks of account research just to provide them, the SDRs, some framework or consistency of that research and of that methodology. But you're talking about a transactional SDR who's, I'm not in my 20s, but when I was in my 20s, I could barely figure out my elbow from my butt, kind of thing. So, you're putting a lot of work or a lot of hope that everything works out on this SDR function. And even if you enable them, it's still a lot to pull together in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, but to Linda's point, do we really think that a meeting with a single person is the right way to go? I mean, I think there's a KPI issue here. I know it's really simple to say, well, we want a meeting, and a meeting with one person is better than nothing. But, in all the work I've been doing with SDR folks lately, the number of SDR organizations which actually incentivize better meetings, the percentage is really small.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, John, I don't disagree. I think the question is, you have you have the balance between having to hit your KPIs or getting the meeting set, having a certain amount of volume or flow through to your AEs. But I think what you do is you leverage that individual meeting to then grow it into a larger group meeting. It's your way in, it's your worm in, right? And so you got to get, if you are unable to get more than 2 people at the table, get the one, and then use the one to then get your way into having a larger group. I don't think anybody disagrees that you want a larger buyer group at the table, for sure. Very early in the cycle. It's just a matter of how do you get there. And I think what you're suggesting is kind of is interesting is, maybe the KPI and just getting a meeting with one person isn't really the right metric of measurement. Maybe it's a KPI with getting more than one person. And I think the question is just, what's the feasibility of that?
Yeah, I think the KPI is having a good meeting. And so if you get the one person, can you build to the next meeting? I think it's just having a really good meeting.
Yeah, I agree. I think having a really good meeting, I think even that, God, we could have a whole conversation on what does it mean to have a really good first meeting, and the variability you see there all the time.
Yeah, well, and I know we're coming up on time. Clearly we could have a much longer conversation. We'll have to continue this another time. Oh, John, thank you for sending that link to the research too, for anybody who's interested. I know I just downloaded it myself. Thank you very, very much for being here, Rashmi, and really everyone too for joining. And definitely, look forward to continuing the conversation another time. John Russo, any final parting words for us?
No, I think you covered it all. Rashmi, I really appreciate you soldiering through the weather there. And as usual, we have more content than time, but that's what makes us so exciting. And next week, we have another Bay Area guest, Kelvin G. from Oracle, who has done all things ABM for Oracle, will be joining us. So super excited. And thank you again, Rashmi, for joining us today.
No, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Have a great weekend.
Cheers.
You too.
Bye.